Hey everyone, it's Mama to Wife of One, and if you're here on my channel, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you guys will like the video, you will share the video, you will subscribe to my channel by clicking the notification bell so you guys can get updates whenever I post something, which I try to post something at least once or twice a week. And if you're here and you've already read the description of the title, you know that we are here to discuss Married at First Sight, Season 12, Episode 14. We are down to the last couple episodes, and I don't think I have ever been more ready for a season to be over. The season has just been mentally draining. It's been frustrating. It's been a lot of anger, a lot of, it's been a lot of that. So, Episode 14, not forces, but it's basically when the couples kind of take a trip to the past, if you will, and kind of, in an effort to allow their spouse to get to know them a little bit better by understanding their foundation and understanding where they came from. So it's a lot of visiting, your childhood homes, looking at old pictures, or just exposing your spouse to things that you enjoyed as a child in an effort for them to get to know who you are as a person. So one thing I will say is that I was so happy that we finally had an episode where there was no mention and no visual representation of Paige and Chris. That was just it was such a relief. It was wonderful to not see them for a minute, because it's like, for what? What's the point? We already know the marriage is over. It's been over for a long time. So I'm just so glad that they didn't force us to sit through another conversation with one or both of them. But we'll start with Brianna and Vincent. So Brianna took Vincent to a dance class or dance studio where Brianna had on her tap shoes. And so for her story, she loved dance when she was younger, but she kind of gave it up because she was like, oh, that's not really a practical thing. I need to be over here where I can make money. So, okay, I'm good at math. I'll be an engineer. And it kind of spoke to her mindset when it came to money, kind of, sort of. It was like, oh, that's going to make me money. That's where I need to be. I don't care if dance makes me happy and is fulfilling. It's not going to get me where I need to be. And that's probably came from her parents telling her that as well. But she exposed all that to him because she wanted him to know, like, hey, when we do have children, I want to make sure our children know that they can do and be whatever they want. And not have to focus on what's going to make me money versus what's going to make me happy. They can find something that hopefully will do both. So it was a cute little moment. It was like, okay, that's nice. And then they met up with Dr. Pepper to kind of revisit some of the questions that came up last week when she met with the couples. So one of his concerns was that whenever, I don't know if it's every day, but I guess there's some days when he wants to just sleep in. He works really hard, works long hours. He wants to sleep in, and then she's always trying to get him up. And it seemed like something petty on the surface, but he was like, I work hard, and when she keeps trying to get me up early to be up with her, it's almost like she sees me as being lazy, and I'm not lazy. And she's like, well, no, I see that he works hard, but sometimes I want to have breakfast with him, and I can't do that because he's still sleeping. And when he brought it up to her last week, she was not budging on it. She was like, oh, well, maybe the compromise is that, he can go to bed earlier. And he's like, but that's not compromise on your part. And I was glad that Dr. Pepper was there to witness that particular exchange, because she was looking like, it's actually not a compromise, Brianna. What are you talking about? But Dr. Pepper was like, well, maybe occasionally he can sleep in, and then on other days you guys wake up and you have breakfast together, do whatever. Like, that needs to be the compromise, where it's not just you, trying to fix something he's doing to get your way. And I think that was good that they solved it. And again, it seems like kind of a petty thing, but small things can grow and become a lot bigger if you don't address them right then and there. So I appreciated that. And then they revisit the conversation on children. And I believe that they watched my episode last week where I recapped the show, because I clearly said that what Vincent needed to say to her when she said, I'm afraid of having kids because I have high blood pressure. His reaction last week wasn't the best reaction, but what I said last week in my video, what he should say is, hey, I don't know much about high blood pressure as it comes to pregnancy, but why don't you and I collectively do some research to figure out exactly what this means, to figure out what our options are, to figure out if there's anything that we can do on our end to make sure that when the time comes for you to have a baby, that you have a baby the safest way possible. That's what I said. And that's basically what he said this episode, that, we decided we're going to do our research. I was like, look at that. They're watching my show. I know they watch this channel. So what's up, Brianna and Vincent? Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys. Hopefully you're subscribed to the channel as well. But I thought that was a good thing for both of them to kind of discuss. And Dr. Pepper brought up adoption, and he didn't outright say no, but it's something that he didn't necessarily consider. And I feel like I don't think it was bad, the fact that he's never considered that. I think because obviously when you're, not when you're growing up, but when you decide in your mind that, oh, I want to have children, I want to have this legacy or whatever, in your mind, you're going to get married, you're going to fall in love, and the wife is going to have these beautiful, perfect children, and everything's going to be okay. Obviously, you can't predict how things are going to work out, because I'm sure when he first thought about a family, he didn't know he was going to sign up for Married at First Sight either. So I think it's okay that he hasn't really considered adoption as an option just yet, and it didn't seem like he was necessarily 100% against it. I feel like for him that would be a worst case scenario, and I probably should say worst like it's a bad thing, but I guess kind of a last option kind of thing. If Brianna 100%, we go to the doctor, we meet up with experts, whatever, and they tell us that she physically cannot carry children, then I think he'll be like, okay, well then that means we'll have to do adoption, we'll have to do a surrogate. So I'm hoping that's how it works out. I feel like that's still kind of up in the air, but I feel like that's not a conversation they're really going to have for a couple years anyway, because it doesn't look like she's trying to have kids at least until like 2 or 3 years from now. So we'll see. But I mean, I didn't see anything that was a major red flag for them this week. I've always liked Brianna and Vincent as a couple, so I still think they're going to be fine, and I still have the utmost faith and confidence in the longevity of their relationship. And then also, when it came time to talk about his background, he took Brianna to a Dominican bodega or restaurant and talked to her about his growing up, his childhood, and how he grew up with his aunt and not with his parents. He didn't have his dad in his life really, and it talks about how they didn't have a lot growing up, and they were kind of poor, and that's why he works as hard as he does, and that's why it's so important to him. Because he didn't have a dad in his life and he really yearned for that father figure, it's so important for him to be a father figure to his own children. And also because they didn't have a lot of money and he has worked hard to have money now, that's why he is so intent on making sure we have savings in place so that if something goes down, if there's an emergency, we're good. And also when we have our kids will never have to want for anything, because we're going to have this money saved up for them for when they go to college or when they want to play baseball or whatever it is. Like, we're going to make sure this money is here. So it spoke a lot, and I think it definitely opened Brianna's eyes to why he views certain things a certain way. And I thought it was good. I thought it was just a nice time for both of them. And again, I think they're going to be okay. I didn't see any red flags. They're going to be great. And let me see, Haley and Jacob, why are they still showing up? Why? Neither one of them at this point, I think they don't even like each other. Well, I'll take that back. I think they tolerate each other. I don't think they hate each other at all, but there is no connection. There's no possibility of love there. It's just two people showing up every day. Basically, because she mentioned actually when she talked about her growing up and how her parents got in all these sports, and that their one rule was that no matter what sport she did, she had to see it all the way through, so she had to complete the season. And that's basically what she's doing with the marriage. She's just seeing it all the way through until the 8 weeks, and then she's going to get the decision day and say, I want a divorce. And it's just so painful to watch them. I know a lot of people get on Haley that they don't like Haley because she's not really trying. She's just kind of existing. They think she's kind of not stringing him along necessarily, but they just, a lot of people don't care for Haley. I think, though, that it takes more than one person to ruin a relationship. So I won't say Haley's my favorite person, but I can't sit here and say that Jacob's completely blameless either. I feel like for Jacob, I feel like he's trying, but he's also impatient. And I feel like he is the king of ruining a good time. When they are having a lovely conversation or having a lovely dinner or whatever, he'll bring up something that's been on his mind for at least 3 or 4 weeks and then choose that moment to bring it up, and it turns into this blow up. And she's like, understandably so, she is so caught off guard every single time, because it's like, wait a minute, we were just having fun 30 seconds ago. I'm not understanding how this turns into an argument. Where is this coming from? But I like the fact that when he does that, she never shuts down. She doesn't turn away. She'll sit there and be like, okay, explain what you mean. Okay, so tell me more. Like, she'll sit there and have the actual conversation with him. Like, she definitely faces it head on, which I appreciate. And she's not immediately facing it with attitude necessarily. It's like, I'm trying to figure out where you're coming from so I can know how to react, because I'm very confused. We were just having dinner and kikiing, and now all of a sudden it's tense again. Like, what is going on? And so it does bother me a lot that he seems to do this all the time. And so the issue that he brought up last night is that, and I forgot about this because the wedding day seems so freaking long ago. But on the wedding day, before they met each other, they sent each other gifts. She sent him a baseball cap, and he sent her a cute little infinity bracelet. And she thought it was pretty, but she never wore it. And then I guess when the wedding was over, her parents, I guess, live in Alabama. So when the wedding was over and they were packing up their stuff to leave, they took the bracelet with them. Not intentionally. It was just like, oh, they accidentally took it or whatever. So his biggest beef was, I'm not saying you have to wear it, but the fact that you don't even have it here, that's just indicative of our marriage, that it didn't mean enough to you to even want to have it in our house. And she's like, what? Like, so, because apparently she called her mom eventually and was like, please overnight this daggone bracelet so I don't have to hear from him ever again. I want to physically put it in his hand and say, look, here is your bracelet. Here you go. You can have it back. And, you know, she's like frustrated, like, why are you still talking about this daggone bracelet? And the other thing that I have an issue with, this man spent $800 on a bracelet for a wife he has not yet met. Now, I understand putting her all into a relationship, putting her all into a marriage. I get that. But why would you even think to spend that much money on something that is an experiment at best, and you don't know if it's going to work out? You have never met this person. What are you doing? And again, the way he kept bringing it up, it was kind of bothering me a little bit. And when Dr. Pepper visited them, he mentioned it again. And Dr. Pepper was like, okay, so Haley, what I need you to at least acknowledge is that when you allowed the bracelet to stay in Alabama, he saw it as rejection. And that's probably the feeling he's had this whole time, that he feels rejected by you every single day. So I need you to acknowledge his feeling. And I agree with Dr. Pepper. Acknowledge it, because everyone is entitled to feel whatever they feel. So if that's how Jacob feels, definitely acknowledge, oh, I'm sorry you feel rejected. That was never my intention, whatever. But I feel like it's hard for her to have that kind of reflective clarity when it comes to this particular situation, because of all the other crap that's led up to this moment, and how he holds on to things and will pick inopportune times to bring them up, and how he kind of almost attacks her all the time. And they don't have enough moments of peace for her to be able to immediately be like, okay, sure, I can do that. And so I feel like, I don't know. I just don't know why they keep showing up. I don't know why they keep showing up. I don't know why they are just still there. There's no hope for them whatsoever. And it's just, I feel like every episode of Haley's just like, okay, so we got 2 more weeks. We got 10 more days. Okay, cool. I can do this for 10 more days. We'll be good. She's ready to get back to her old life. Like, she is really ready to just be like, you know what? I'm good. Let's go. We don't even have to be friends after this. It was nice meeting you. I'll have my lawyer contact your lawyer, and we'll just kind of keep it pushing. I really think that's what it is. And I still believe that neither one of them should have signed up for this. I don't think neither one of them are really ready to be married. He has a lot of issues from his past that he hasn't really addressed, and he's bringing those issues into his current relationship. And she is also the same way. She's still hurt from a past relationship that was very controlling, and she never really got therapy or figured that out. So she's kind of closed off in her relationship. So neither one of them are really meant to be married at this point. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, they're just so painful to watch. It's like, y'all, please, I need y'all to get together. Okay, Clara and Ryan, y'all, whew, they are another couple where it's like, what are y'all doing? I don't understand. So Ryan, and I'm assuming Ryan's parents aren't, so actually now that I think about it, this is interesting, because all the other couples, they brought up old pictures of them. They went to visit family homes. They, did some activity that reminded them of their childhood or whatever. But I don't remember that happening with Ryan. It showed him talking to her mom in an effort to kind of understand Claire a little bit better. And then they went to Clara's parents' house and had lunch there, and Clara showed him old pictures and her old bedroom and did all that stuff. But I don't remember them doing that with Ryan and his family, or just like going down memory lane with him at all. I don't really remember that, unless I missed it from last night's episode, and I very well could have. So if I did, please let me know and tell me in the comments like what happened. Because I get the impression, and Clara gets the impression, that Ryan is, not that he's necessarily closed off, but he's not comfortable being vulnerable. So everything is just very kind of light and airy, and it's surface level. It's nothing really deep there. But I like the conversation that he had with Clara's mom, and he did mention to her how important it is for him to raise his children in the church. And so when Clara was growing up, her mom was one going to church and her dad wasn't. So Clara basically brought that up to Ryan to say, I've seen marriages work where one parent's going to church and the other one isn't. So even if you want to raise our kids in church, I'm not opposed to that. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be there the whole time. And that doesn't necessarily mean that our kids should have to be there the whole time. Like, I'd like for them to have that choice or whatever. And Clara's mom said something kind of like, oh, and I think for Ryan it was like a light bulb that went off. Clara's mom was like, you know, it's funny because I didn't start going to church until I had children. When I had children is when my mind shifted on a lot of different things, and I decided I want them to have this particular foundation that maybe I didn't have growing up, or maybe I did have growing up but I kind of stayed away from. But, you know, my faith is important to me, and I wanted to share that with my kids. So when I got pregnant and my babies came, that's when I started taking them to church. And I think for Ryan, it gave him a little bit of hope that, oh, well, maybe Clara will have the same, you know, whatever. But the thing is, the way her mom views that time in her life obviously is very different from the way Clara views it, because Clara is viewing viewing that time as, I did not have a choice but to go to church. I didn't have a choice but to, you know, praise, worship, do all that other stuff. So in her mind, that wasn't necessarily a happy time because it was forced. And sometimes when you're forced to do something, obviously you can't really appreciate what it's bringing you, and sometimes you're not really getting into it because it's more of an obligation as opposed to a want or a desire. And because of that, she may not have gotten out of it what her mom wanted her to get out of it. So even though Ryan has a little kernel of hope, I hope that he also realizes, okay, but that's not how Clara describes her experience. That was really different for her. So because she has that in her mind of what that church experience was like, once she has children, she is going to be very protective of them and not want them to necessarily feel the way she felt when she was a little girl. So I feel like that's a little dicey. There's no way to tell how that's going to go. But I like the fact that he sought out the mom to have a conversation with her. And let's see. Her mom said something. Oh, first of all, this is a funny thing. Ryan asked the parents, did Clara do anything, like what was like one of the worst things that Clara did when she was younger? And Clara was like, I remember that I got the CD, it was Usher Confessions, and my mom just broke it in half, like, no, that is inappropriate, you shouldn't listen to that. I thought that was really funny because I thought that was also supposed to be indicative of the fact that Clara has always liked Black culture and Black people. That's just kind of the way I took it, and I'm probably reaching, and I don't care. I just thought that it amused me. I kind of kikied at that. But one thing I did like that the mom said, Ryan asked her parents, how do you guys feel about decision day? Like, what are your thoughts on it? And her mom said, make sure every day is decision day. And I absolutely loved that, because in a marriage, that's basically what it is. Every day you are choosing to be with this person. You are choosing to stand by them when they go through stuff. You are choosing to wear their ring on your finger. You are making that choice every single day to show up and be present and to try your best to be everything that that person needs. So I love that she said that to them. Hopefully they'll take that to heart. And oh God, Dr. Pepper went to visit them as well to talk over some of these questions that they had last week. And they're like, yeah, you know, I think we've handled it well and blah, blah, blah. But like, Clara still isn't having any sex. And she loves this man. She is in love with this man, but she will not tell him because he's never said it to anybody ever, never said to a significant other. So she's afraid if I put all that stuff out there and say this to him, he's not going to say it back. I'm going to be crushed. That's going to hurt my feelings, blah, blah, blah. But I was thinking, if I was in a situation, would I make that same decision and not tell the person how I feel? And I don't think I would. I feel like for me, I love very hard. And she said, she definitely doesn't say the word love to him, but she basically said, out loud to him, I feel like through my actions, I'm showing him how strongly I feel about him. And she's very carefully worded that, which I thought was interesting. But I feel like I love just as hard and as deeply as she says that she does, that I can't necessarily keep that to myself. Like with my husband, I told him I loved him because I remember we were asleep. I had a dream, and in the dream I told him I loved him. And when I woke up and looked at him, I was like, oh, I do love this man. And I told him, and it was fine. Like, it was after like a month or two of dating. And he didn't say it back right away. And I wasn't hurt by it because it was like, well, I can't control how he feels. I can't control, if he says it or not. All I can control is my own emotions. So for my own emotions, it was important to me to tell him that I loved him. And 2 months later, he told me he loved me. And here we are, almost 18 years together. And so I don't think I make the same decision that Clara is making, because I think regardless if you tell him or not, there's a potential to get hurt there. I don't think she should hide that from him, though, because maybe he's not saying it because he doesn't necessarily know what that feels like, and he may be afraid of being rejected by her as well. Because even though she says she's showing him with her actions how she feels, he's probably thinking the same way, that, oh, I'm showing her all the time that I care about her and I'm thinking about her and all this other stuff. So it could just, somebody has to jump first. And unfortunately, since Claire has more experience with the love word, she needs to be the one to jump out there to say, hey, Ryan, I am in love with you. I don't know if she'll ever do that, but I think that she should. I think she's going to have to be one to say it first, because I just don't see him doing it. And then the other thing is Dr. Pepper had them write a letter to their younger self. And, it could be from any point in your past. And I've never done this before. I've always kind of wanted to. And I feel like the exercise is, one of those things where, now that I know this, what would I tell my person then? To either warn them or to encourage them. And I think that's a big distinction right there. Because I feel like those letters are supposed to be meant to encourage your younger self. Because even though I am 39 years old, I am no longer 19, no longer 9, no longer whatever. But all of those versions of me are still in me. So some of those issues and insecurities I had then may not have completely gone away. They're still somewhere tucked inside of me, but maybe they've morphed into other areas. So maybe once I was insecure about the fact that, and I kind of bonded with Brianna about this because she said she was very insecure when she was younger about being a chocolate girl. I had that same insecurity when I was younger because it just so happened that all of my closest girlfriends were all light-skinned women. That was not planned. Two of them were, two were related to me, and the other 2 or 3 I met in school. That wasn't planned at all. It just happened that way. But I very vividly remember just looking around one day like, oh, I'm the darkest and I am the thickest. And so I immediately kind of not compared myself to the other girls, but those 2 traits just stood out, that I was the thickest one and I was the darkest one. So in my head, whenever they got numbers from boys or got looks from boys and I didn't, it was always because of that. Because obviously I'm not pretty enough. Obviously I'm too thick. Obviously I'm too this, and this. And granted, I have a lot more confidence now as a grown woman, but some of those things are probably still inside me, right? So I think the act of writing a letter to your younger self is probably very therapeutic, because you're writing essentially to the person who is still there. You're just saying like, hey, look, I know you went through X, Y, and Z, but let me tell you how it gets better. Let me tell you what you did to help it get better. So just stay the course. Don't worry about it. You're going to be good. So when Ryan and Clara wrote their letters to their younger self, Clara was I could see her kind of getting emotional and just telling her younger self, don't be afraid to love and fall in love. Falling in love is wonderful, but it sucks at the same time. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself and do this and do that. And it was very, just great. And it was powerful. And it was yes, emotional. I loved it all. And then Ryan did his, and it was it was okay, but it definitely wasn't as deep as Clara's. And Clara thought that, oh, I'm going to get something from this. And I think also for Clara, she puts a little too much on certain situations. And when I say too much, she expected so much from his letter, expected to get some big reveal about his personality or about his childhood or about his deepest fear or whatever, that when she didn't get that, she was so disappointed in him. But, I feel like he was honest in the things that he said. I didn't think it was necessarily deep, But he was honest in the things that he said. And I think, again, she just puts too much on some things and ends up being very disappointed in the end. So I could just tell from her face, she looks really defeated. And so I don't know what's going to happen to Decision Day. I think it's going to be very much a toss-up. He's definitely more satisfied in the relationship than she is, which I find just utterly clueless. Like, he really is not in tune with how this woman feels. He's really, and I feel like at some point you should realize, wait a minute, when I met her, she was very bubbly and she was always, saying what she feels even when nobody asked for it. She was a talker, she was this, she was that. And now she's a lot more reserved, she's a lot quieter. And I think because he's a lot quieter, maybe he likes the fact that she's changed, but he needs to think like, okay, but that's not the person that I married, so something is going on. And he has not made that correlation at all. So he just frustrates the heck out of me. And it's funny because I'm on a group chat with my mother and my uncle because I got them watching the show as well. And when Ryan and Clara got on the screen, I got a wonderfully worded text from my uncle. He said, "Niece, I've come to the conclusion that Ryan is gay. What straight guy you know who's living with a woman who's trying to give him some and he is resisting?" I was like, huh, interesting. And the thing is, I feel like that's the running joke or running theory that he is gay. And it is interesting because one of the things that Clara said was, I know that Ryan, she said to Dr. Pepper, I know that Ryan equates love with intimacy. Like those two kind of go hand in hand. But it's like, okay, but he's never said I love you to someone. So does that mean he's never been intimate with anyone? He's doing lots of stuff with her. So you're not shy to the female body. So I don't necessarily think he's gay. I mean, I think the two theories is that either he is gay or he is a virgin. And I don't know if we'll ever find out if either one of those are true or false or whatever, because I feel like he is so close-lipped. And I see that Clara is very protective of him because she doesn't comment on that stuff either. But I don't know. I want them to go the distance, but I need him to stop being clueless and really open his eyes. And, I need him just to do better. And then we have Virginia and Eric. Now, I say all the time that I do not like to ever be in defense of Eric. Eric is controlling and he is arrogant and he's a lot of things. However, I feel like every week it flips for me between the two of them because I don't think either one of them are necessarily bad people, but Virginia is extremely immature. And another podcast I listened to said it really well. They're like, she shouldn't be getting married. She should have been looking for a steady boyfriend, not a husband. Before I even go there. So when they talked about their childhood, Eric took Virginia to his childhood home and showed him pictures of playing baseball, showed his medals, because, he's in the armed forces, things in the Air Force. And, he talked about how important family is to him because his family structure is 2-parent household. They're still married. Everything's great. We love each other and we're tight. Her structure is that her parents were divorced. It was really ugly. At, different pockets of her life, she wasn't talking to her mom. Sometimes she wasn't talking to her dad. It was really kind of iffy and all that stuff. So grew up very, very differently. And I think he wanted to show her, hey, this is what I know. This is what I strive for. So I am here for you. I'm not leaving you. I am here to be there in support of you. And I thought it was interesting that she started crying when he was talking about how tight he's with his family. And she was like, you keep saying that, but you don't call my parents and you don't, you're not making an effort to get to know my family. And I feel like you haven't met most of them. And he was confused because he's like, well, I've been focusing on our relationship and I have been really busy. She's like, I know, but I talk to your mom and your sister-in-law all the time. I always check in with them. And on one hand, I think that is really sweet that she is, doing that with his family and really trying to make sure she is a presence in all parts of his life. That's good. However, it's been 6 weeks. So how much is he supposed to be doing at this point? And you guys have had a lot of freaking issues. So I understood him wanting to pour his effort into being with her, especially because with his jobs, he's gone half the month. So if I'm gone half the month, and then the month that I am here, or the half the month that I am here, we're fighting all the time, like obviously my focus is on you. My focus is not on your dad and your mom, whoever. But the very next scene, he got on the phone and he called her dad. So I like the fact that we're seeing him make an effort. And I feel like because that was kind of the big beef that I've had with him, is that it seemed like Virginia was making all of these changes and he wasn't doing anything. So it showed that he was listening to her, and he called her dad and had a conversation with the dad about her, and it was basically like, I'm sorry I haven't really called, but the dad agreed with him. He was like, you need to, focus on your own relationship. Like, that's still new, that's still fresh, you need to work on that. The dad also said something I really enjoyed, because Eric does have a very specific picture in his head of what a marriage is. And part of it is like his parents' marriage. The other part is the marriage that he did have that failed. And so because of that, he's always he basically told Virginia's dad that I have a way of doing marriage, and I'm trying to get your daughter to understand how a marriage is supposed to be. And the dad said, there's a lot of good ways that a marriage can look, even if it doesn't look like everyone else's. And I love that he said that specifically to Eric, because I feel like when other people say things to Eric, he definitely takes it to heart. And he definitely kind of listens and soaks it in and is like, I've never thought about it that way. And Dr. Pepper said it to him as well. And he was like, okay, so, all right. And I feel like it kind of opened his mind just a little bit, maybe just a little bit, just like a crack, to new ideas and new ways of doing some things. But in his head, there are still some things that you don't do in a marriage. Like, you don't cheat, obviously, and you don't spend the night at men's houses. And that's where Virginia kind of draws the line. But wait a minute, but they're my best friends, and if I get really drunk and I stay at their house, like, why is that a big deal? Especially if you're not here. What does it matter if I'm doing that when you're not here? And it was like, why is that I remember the term, the hill you want to throw yourself on, or whatever the term is. Like, why is that the thing that you want to fight for, is spending the night on the couches of your male friends? He has never said, don't have these male friends, cut them out of your life, you don't need them, that's done with. He's never said that. So he's not trying to take away your friendship with these guys. He's met the guys, he's cool with them, he understands, the dynamic between you guys. He's not threatened, he's fine with that. So all he's asking you to do is not spend the night at their house anymore. I don't understand why she's so adamant that no, because that's not fair. Like, why do you need to spend the night at their house? Why do you plan to drink so much that you do spend the night at your house? You've been drinking long enough, and you drink often enough on this show, that you know when your limit is. So if you're out with them and you are drinking and you feel yourself getting to that limit, use some self-control and stop. Take an Uber home and have one of them drop you off. Or if you're like, I really want to get wasted tonight, I'm partying, celebrating, whatever, and Eric isn't home, or even if he is home, invite the friends to your house. You guys can drink at your house, and then you can send them home. So when it's time to pass out, you're passing out in your own bed. You don't have to worry about sleeping on somebody else's couch. There's so many ways to handle that particular situation, but I think for her, if he said these like suggestions to her, I hope that she would listen, but all she's hearing in her head is, he's trying to tell me what to do. He's telling me I can't do this with my friends. That's all she's focused on. And that she is 26 at the end of the day. She is still immature. So she isn't seeing the bigger picture. She isn't understanding why this is an issue. And I will say that when you get married, there are certain things that you do have to adjust in your head. It's never immediate. It always takes time. And it's especially hard when you don't have time to get used to being married, or get used to even the idea of marriage. You're told on a Monday, hey, we found someone for you that you're going to marry, and you're going to get married in 2 weeks. So you don't have the luxury of dating for a few years and ingratiating them into your life, and getting to the practice of putting them first. You don't get to have all of that. You go from being single to 2 weeks later, now you're married. And so to expect a wife or a husband in that kind of situation to immediately put you first and immediately, put you above all of their friends and their family, it's not realistic for that to happen right away. Even if you've been dating for a few years, it still isn't necessarily realistic for that to happen right away. It's a process. It takes time to get to that point. And so I think with Virginia, I think she can get to that point, but she has to first acknowledge that it has to get to that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, he wants me to put my friends first. I know that needs to happen. I'm going to get used to that idea. Let me give it time. It's another thing to be like, he wants me to put him first before my friends. But I've known my friends longer. Like, those are my friends. It's like, okay, well, that means you're not even entertaining the idea. You're not understanding the need to do that. So that's a problem. So that's a mindset thing that you have it in your head. These are my friends. I knew them first. Obviously, my friends are going to come first. And then you come after the friends. Like, you're a close second. And it's like, well, no, that's not the way it works. So again, if you wanted it that way, you should have been looking for a boyfriend and not for a husband. So I was actually on Eric's side for some of this episode. And even, it was funny, she had, Eric said something that, I thought was interesting too. Virginia's response was interesting. Eric very much wants to be needed by her. He said to Dr. Pepper last week, I know I said I want an independent woman, but I think she's a little too independent, and I don't really know how to handle that. And so he basically said to her again, like, it's okay to be needed. Like, I want you to need me. And she was like, well, can I just want you instead of need you? And I was like, oh, that is a good question. And I don't know if that's something he could handle. Like, it's good to be wanted, obviously. That means she's making the choice to want you in her life, to want you beside her, all that stuff. I feel like that's a good feeling. But because he is so, his mindset is so primed to take care of other people, that the act of being needed is what drives him. I don't know if he could exist in a relationship where he's not needed at all. I just don't see that working for him. But Dr. Pepper came over and they kind of got into discussion again about how she feels he's stuck in what she says, I think you get stuck in these constraints of what marriage is supposed to be. But that went back to the whole conversation about, he was like, I feel like, because she was like, I want us to sit down. Dr. Pepper told them, I want you to both sit down separately, write down your goals for your marriage, and then write down the steps or actions that need to be taken to reach those goals. And then come back together and figure out if you have the same goals or whatever, and just kind of figure out a game plan. So they're both on board with that. And when she said, I think you're kind of stuck in those constraints or whatever, he was like, well, I just felt like there were some things that were commonplace in all marriages. He's like, but I'm willing to sit down and have us figure out what our marriage looks like, just me and you. It's like, if Dr. Pepper is saying it and you're saying it and your dad is saying it, then yeah, you're right. We need to figure out what works specifically for Virginia and Eric, for us. But then she had to go bring up the whole guy thing again and her guy friends, and he's like, I'm sorry, like, no, I feel like that is in every marriage that's not okay. Because even when they met up with Pastor Cal earlier in the season and brought that up, Pastor Cal was like, I'm married and I would have a problem with my wife sleeping on some man's couch. And my uncle, when that scene came up, my uncle texted me and asked me, how would your husband feel about it? And I was like, truthfully, I don't have a ton of guy friends. I have guys that I am cool with. But in terms of guys that I kick it with and talk to, it's only 1.5, 2. I'll say the 2 guys I actually like talk to, and like those are my boys, whatever. One of them has been my best friend since I was 16. My husband knows exactly who he is, and he's also very married himself. We got married the same year. So if anything ever happened where I'm out with him and I get drunk or I get sick or whatever and I have to stay on his couch, my husband already told me, because I had a discussion with him when she first brought it up in the show, when Virginia first brought it up to Pastor Cal. Asked my husband, like, how would you feel? He's like, I mean, if it was your boy, like, I wouldn't care. Like, I know he's married. I know you're not going to do nothing. He's like, so I'd be fine with it. But it's one thing to be like, oh, there's an emergency, I need to spend the night on your couch. And it's another thing to be like, oh, well, constantly I'm staying on their couch because I'm constantly getting so drunk. She made it seem like this is an every month kind of thing. Now, that consistency is like, yeah, no, when you're married, maybe you shouldn't do that anymore. Because, again, you're old enough to know whatever your you know what your limit is when it comes to drinking. So when you know that, just stop drinking at some point. Or again, have money for an Uber, have them drop you off, something. There's other things you can do besides saying, oh yeah, that's my go-to, I'm gonna spend the night on the couch. That was fine when you were single, but you're not anymore. And I feel like she just isn't, her mind can't wrap herself around that. She can't come to grips with the fact that her life has to actually change now that she's married. Why should my life change? Like, I'm still the same person and blah, blah, blah. It's like, again, I hate being on Eric's side, but I completely agree with him this episode. I was like, no, she's being immature. You're not asking for a lot. You're not saying get rid of them people, I don't care about them. You're saying just don't spend the night at his house. Like, I don't understand why that's a big deal and why she chose that thing to be so incensed about. And even when she had his sister-in-law come over, because they've gotten pretty close, and was talking to her about, not specifically about issues she and Eric are having, but she was like, it's just that I like my guy friends and I like to do this, and I think Eric would have a problem with that. And the sister-in-law basically was just saying like, but in her like talking head, she was like, Eric's not gonna like the fact that she does this, and Eric is not gonna like that she does this. I'm trying to think, let me see. Oh yeah, so yeah, the sister felt like she was trying to be really PC, but she was like, Eric is not gonna like the fact that she's not willing to put him first in her life. And I feel like no husband would be happy with that, but I don't know. My predictions are kind of all over the place, I think. I feel like Brianna and Vincent are going to be good. I have the utmost faith and confidence in them. Haley and Jacob should not even be together. They're not even going to be friends after this. They're just going to be like, okay, shake hands, nice to meet you, and they're going to walk away from each other forever, I think. For Eric and Virginia, they could potentially stay together. I don't think that she's ready to make the kind of commitment that is needed to be married. I just don't think she is. And for Eric, I don't know. Eric is still controlling and he's still arrogant. But again, he's done some things the past couple episodes that have made me be like, oh, okay, you're not completely awful. And they do love each other, so that's the sucky part, that if we love each other and can't make it work, they could potentially make it work. But Virginia really has to make the necessary changes, and Eric does too. They both have to be willing to make these changes and these stipulations in order to be with each other. Ryan and Clara needs to learn how to be 100% honest with Ryan about what she wants. If she can't do that, then they definitely not gonna make it. And he needs to kind of get over himself and kind of read the room. Pay attention to your wife's needs. She's saying she needs some sex. She's saying she needs to feel loved or whatever. You got to figure out how to give that to her. Like, you really do. And I feel like he's so clueless because he's not asking questions. He's just kind of staking how it's gonna be. And if she go along with it, cool. If she don't speak up, obviously that means she's fine with it. And it's like, dude, you gotta talk to this woman. So that's my prediction for this week. I think we have 1.5 episodes maybe to go of the show, but I'm so ready for it to be over because I'm just done dealing with these people. But thank you guys for watching my video. I hope to see you again next week. If you have recommendations for other shows that I should review and recap, please let me know. Leave them in the comments, all right? See you guys later. Peace.